Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Papa Bale, and I'm just showing you a few basic starter things you would need to make your own pulse motor. First you would start out with your rotor, which is this disc, this circle, and then you would need on that disc, as you can see, I have lines drawn out from the center. There are 24 lines drawn out from the center, but underneath that top disc there's another disc, and it's I believe 32 degrees, 32.72 degrees for each one of these magnets, which would make 11 evenly spaced magnets around the edge here. And the only reason I made it 11 is because I saw somebody else make one the opposite orientation with 11. So instead of it spinning like a merry-go-round, it spun like the wheel on The Price is Right. You get what I'm saying? The orientation. Okay. And then here's another concept of a rotor. There are 12 sets of neodymium magnets, 24 lines, one every other line. Anyway, your rotor can be a CD. You at least want to get your cardinal directions. So like on this CD, you would want to have at least 4 magnets. After you get your rotor situated, I always want to call it a router because, you know, the internet's such a big thing nowadays. Yeah, you got your sharpie, you got your ruler. So you make a little notch like every 30 degrees or 15 degrees or 5 degrees. And then you draw the lines. If they're, you see, even numbers, you should be able to draw it from side to side and it will go perfect. So once you get your rotor situated, and then one more thing, a CD won't have a shaft, and you're better off just putting that right on the CD motor, removed from whatever CD player you're going to use to make that pulse motor. You need a coil. Since the coil is the heart of the pulse motor, you're going to need a coil and you're going to need a power supply. Now your power supply can take shape in many different forms. It can be a battery, like this lithium ion battery, or it can be a 12-volt power supply. It doesn't really matter, but it goes from the power supply to the coil. The coil is always the first thing that gets hooked up, second thing in line. Power supply, coil. You have homemade coil in the red there, and then you got store-bought coil in the red. That's a 500N 12-volt solenoid magnet, and this is a solenoid magnet. I don't know how many turns are there, but if you want to make your own, you can either use a tool, which would be okay. I would love to use a tool sometimes, but I find great relaxation in winding the coil by hand. You just gotta, it doesn't have to be like perfectly uniform. It just has to be, you know, kind of evenly across when you turn it. So, I mean, you can wrap all this side first if you want, and then do the middle, or you could do both ends and then the middle. Just as long as it all kind of evens out at the end, it'll work. Now, naturally, if you make it like a one solid wrap, and then on top of that another solid wrap. But I mean, just look, you can barely see the wire that I'm using. You can kind of see it wobbling there. It's 32 gauge. If you could wind that perfectly, I would be shocked, even if you are using tools. You need connectors to connect your power supply to your coil. And then, you know, if that's the heart, if the coil is the heart, then the reed switch is the brains. Which, the reed switch is basically what makes this whole thing work. Now this is a normally open high frequency reed switch. It has a indicator light, and it's awesome. I mean, this thing goes super fast, and the reed switch has no trouble keeping up with it. Whereas I had, you know, kind of, and they're good, they work, the regular reed switches, but eventually they stay on, and when they stay on, you don't have a pulse motor, and it'll stop. You'll see what I mean through some experimentation of your own, but I suggest get the high frequency right off the bat, and you probably won't have this problem ever. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but these are sustainable. I had a lot of problems with the mini ones. They kind of look like they should be on a breadboard, you know. One thing I'd like to say in regards to energy generation, you can put one of the homemade coils right up next to the moving pulse motor, and then you can hook via connector that coil up to some LED, and when the magnets pass, they will light up that LED without it being hooked to a power supply. A lot of people say this is fake, that there's no way this can happen. And I wasn't sure. I was skeptical myself at first, and then, you know, I'm like, wow, those lights are turning on. It's 100% legit. When you pass a magnet at high speed across a coil, you will create a current. Now I got up to basically 11 volts AC with this pulse motor off of one coil, and no hardware, just coil to multimeter. So cool. That's almost enough to light a light bulb. No, it's not. That's 120 volts. So in order to light a light bulb, I would need capacitors, maybe rectifier, But that's beside the point. We're just talking pulse motors here. All right, so basically you need router. You need your tools to draw your lines, and to place your magnets on your rotor. You need your coils, either store-bought or homemade. 32 gauge wire would be enough. I recommend for this project buying at least a pound, if not 3 pounds to start. You'll get hooked on it right away. I mean, once you make something that works, it's invigorating. Then you need your reed switches. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, let me talk about the shaft for a minute. No shaft. Shaft and these nipples of the shaft that I have sticking out of the bottom. Go into my base, which is 4x2 pegboard with 1/4-inch holes. So these 1/4-inch poles fit well into 1/4-inch holes. Now this has a nipple too. And let me show you where these nipples are going. Okay, there's a double stacked glued together disc with 2 bearings, 1 in each disc. And the nipple goes right into those bearings. And they're very highly lubricated. Well, normally I don't have this much trouble. There we go. And those bearings are 1/4 inch inner diameter. You can see how well that spins. I think it's a little lopsided and I might have to redo it. But I have 3 pulse motor coils hooked up to the reed switch and the power supply. And that's to reduce amperage. Because if it's just one coil, see, like I have a 24, 25 volt power supply. And I have 2 multipliers hooked to it. Because there's 2 circuits. And that's 77 volts, 75 volts. Any higher than that and you're going to start throwing magnets and it's not fun. Well, it is kind of fun, but yeah, don't tell my girlfriend I said that. Okay. Let me get my other rotor. See, that's pretty good. Let me get this generator coil in place. All right, so let's turn on the power. I got 2 switches for the power. Look at that solenoid magnet. How many turns do you think is in that monster right there? I can tell you it's more than 7,000. See, I was just pushing that whole amp. You know, you start pushing like close to 5 amps and these capacitors will explode. There's proof. All right, let me look underneath here. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, it is a little wobbly. There's a little vibration in the pedals. But both of these are going faster than you will get any other way. See, that LED is hooked to the little guy. It's not even flashing. And that's the benefit of having more magnets and a high speed and a high frequency reed switch. And the magnets are going by so fast that is not even flashing. Now, you go over here and there's 11, very much more spaced out. You can see how those lights are flashing. Okay, now this may be too much for a tutorial, but there you have it. The high frequency reed switch. The indicator light flashes every time there's like a close, and it's flashing every time a magnet like closes the gap there, and you can't even see it flashing. That's how fast it's going. But I tell you right now, you will need voltage to make this one work. Anything with a shaft, you're going to need volts because you have that extra friction. Now, the one with the CD, you don't need, I have one coil that I just made. It's on a bobbin that's like that big. You need stuff like that, and you can do one AAA battery will run that. Virtually all the same stuff except the CD and the little nubby that the CD goes on in your CD player. So you need that whole apparatus. And then the magnets on the rotor, the permanent magnets, and then the electro solenoid magnets. And then if you want to make any lights light up, you need generator coils, which are not hooked up to your power supply. And there's no power supply over there on the other side of the table either. I mean, you know what I mean? It looks like that LED is lighting up from something on the other side of the table, but it's just this coil right here. And this coil over here is lighting up all those on the breadboard. I don't know why it's so hard to like fathom that. I'm just really impressed that that light isn't flashing. It's freaking solid. Which one of these looks like it's going faster? All right, I think we're gonna call it. Getting a little... Alright, that is off and winding down. I'll even cut the switch. And we're going to see that these lights remain on, remain flashing, at least for a little while. And that's because the rate of speed the magnets are crossing the coil are still good enough. And when it gets slow, when this one gets slow enough, that'll start flashing. Anyway, I think it's really cool. And then, you know, a little bit more advanced stuff, because I have a shaft, I can add things like this. Turbine generator, which can generate up to 75 volts at full speed. I'm thinking we're going to get about 30 volts out of it, because full speed is about 3,500 RPM. And I guarantee you at 3,500 RPM, these magnets are going everywhere. Because it's only hot glue. Alright, thank you very much. Have a good day. Please subscribe.